when you guys got together, what was the first thing you decided needed attention for growth to happen?
Tone and attitude. The two things that I remember talking about the most were keeping everything positive, um, because it can be pretty easy for people to fall into some gripes and things like that. But we needed to keep everything positive to have some forward movement, but also everything that we do as a leadership team, everything we try to manage people to do, or every idea we put out there that we want the chapter to embrace, has to have some intent behind it. It has to be an intentional thing where we're not just saying, hey, we're going to do this. What we're saying is, this is what we would like to do. This is how we would like to do it. And this is how we think it's going to benefit the chapter, which is the why we want to do it. And if we can articulate that, then we have a lot more participation.
Finish this sentence. Leadership to me means?
Setting an example and staying positive and not getting discouraged.
Welcome to the Perfect 100, the podcast for BNI members who want to maximize their membership, deepen their impact, and grow their business through intentional networking. I'm your host, Tammy Zurak, a CliftonStrengths coach, longtime BNI leader, and one of the few members worldwide to maintain a perfect Power of One score. Each week, we'll explore the habits, mindsets, and everyday strategies of BNI members who are turning their membership into momentum. Hello and welcome back to the Perfect 100. We've had a pivot moment today. We are in the throes of a winter storm and none of us can leave our homes. So you're getting from the home office today. But we're going to roll right in because, strategic plans for things. So we're ready to roll. So anyway, I am your host, Tammy Zurak. I haven't said in a while that I hold the business coach seat in the East Memphis chapter. And today my guest is Chris Carruth, owner of More Than Closets, a family business his parents started over 30 years ago. And Chris didn't just inherit a company, he chose to step into it and lead it forward. He's also the current president of my former BNI chapter. And since January 1st, I've been supporting that chapter as their director consultant. And here's what's interesting. Chris's individual Power of One score has gone down a little bit into the yellow, but the chapter's performance since he's taken over has steadily been improving. So we're going to talk a lot about that today. That contrast matters. It's not... the score is only as meaningful as what is happening behind the scenes. So we'll dig into that. But we're going to get into family business, succession, leading through personal change. And later in the episode, we're going to talk about Chris's strengths and understand why he leads the way he does. So if you're building something you want to last or leading people through growth, this should be a good one for you. So let's jump in. Hi, Chris. How are you?
Hello, good morning.
Good to have you here. All right, let's go ahead and do your 45 seconds so you can tell everybody a little bit more about you.
Okay, well, my name is Chris Carruth. I'm one of the owners of More Than Closets in Cordova, Tennessee, and we hold the custom home storage seat in the Greater Memphis chapter of BNI. And what we do basically is we handle all sorts of storage issues by building custom solutions, whether it's a closet or a pantry, a Murphy bed, garage cabinets, pretty much any area of the home. What we look for in terms of referrals is we love working with general contractors who specialize in kitchen and bath remodels. We love helping homeowners also solve problems to make their house more livable. And we are also actively hiring salespeople and an installer.
Awesome. So let's talk about your business a little bit. Your parents started this business over 30 years ago. Before it was what it is today, what were they doing and what did you think led them to take the leap into business ownership?
So both of my parents made a career in nonprofits. My father with the United Way and then with Rhodes College, and my mom through multiple homes for mentally disabled youths and then teens. And then she moved here and worked with a place called the Family Link, which was downtown, and got integrated with youth villages, which I think anybody in the Memphis area knows about. And then she went into grant writing. Dad left Rhodes and decided he wanted to do his own thing to allow himself some creativity. And I could do a whole show on how he came about to be in the closet business, but it worked for him. It helped him with to feel some independence, I think. Uh, so he started or bought into the business and built it from 1995 on, and then I started with him in 2002.
Okay. And now have they stepped out? Or are they fully out, or are they
Yes.
still
So in
you're on?
2018, they sold the business to me and my partner, and then retired.
Okay.
So
Awesome. And so I'm imagining if I was in a family business, I have never been in one myself, but I'm the first one to step out into the business entrepreneurship in the family. But I'm imagining that if I was somebody who started a business, that having my kids come into my business one day might be something powerful. What was that like for you to kind of step in, and then for them to, move on and you to take it over?
well, I would say that it definitely had its ups and downs. My dad and I have a unique relationship, and we had to work on that some. Um, and I came from a restaurant background where I was leading uh, kitchens and staffs in high volume restaurants. Um, and it did involve lots of long talks. And we even had a business coach that specialized in family businesses that helped us a little bit, just so we could work out on our dynamics and make sure that each of us was capitalizing on the strengths that we brought, and also getting along and maintaining the family harmony.
Yeah.
So it worked out well because a lot of what I brought in to the business were a lot of my attributes were things that my dad either didn't have or didn't want to focus on. So I did a lot of operational work while he did the sales and the front facing things that allowed him to meet people. The networking side of our business is something that I really pushed in the late 2000s. And I think I finally joined BNI. I should have looked this up, but I think we joined sometime around 2014 or 15 for our initial run. We had actually visited through another business coach who was in the Greater Memphis chapter. I had visited the Greater Memphis chapter when there were, I think, about 70 or 75 members,
Wow.
and uh, it was a little intimidating to me, to say the least, having never been into networking. But then fast forward several years, and I went back to BNI. I got uh, talked to someone who I'd become friends with that got me to come back and check it out, and then I convinced my parents that it's something we needed to do.
Awesome. So the succession, if being in the business doesn't mean you have to stay in the business. So what made you decide that committing to it for your own self was the thing you wanted to do next?
Well, it was a combination of things. One thing is when you leave the business sector for 20 years, or even 10 years, really, it can be a challenging thing to get back into that same sector, especially from a financial standpoint of you're what you're making with what you're doing, and having to get more of into an entry or low level management type job or position rather, to get back out there. My background being in restaurants, being an assistant restaurant manager at 40 really wasn't an attractive thing,
Right.
and it's not conducive to family. And also, my educational background was in information systems and technology, but I hadn't really touched it since 1995, and that's an
Lots
industry
of
that
change.
can really leave you behind quickly if you're not paying attention. So, it seemed like the natural fit to try to take this and turn it into something bigger than what it was when we bought it.
That's awesome. Yeah, the all of those things, and sometimes it goes the opposite direction. Is a lot of people. I came from a corporate background and went to starting my own business. So I went from a nice salary and benefits and all the things to now you're on your own. So
Right.
go figure out how to make that money back again, versus going, from decent back to, but the restaurant business has its own set of things. And the IT thing also is everything. My husband worked in he worked with computers a lot when he was much younger. And then he went to work corporate. And he always felt like maybe he could fall back on that, but he'd have to start all over again because, especially today, the pace of things is like,
It's the
it's insane.
continuing education, right? I'm sorry, it's
Yeah.
the continuing education that's required in that industry is pretty intense.
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, it's an ongoing, and with AI now, it's like, like being on a rocket ship trying to keep up with all the changes of everything that's next for us. So, very interesting. All right, so before we go deeper, let's go into your power of one because I did allude to it at the front end. So, in your Palms report. So, Chris has a total score of 65 in the yellow. He has 20 points for attendance. He's not missed a one, and being president, that's probably a good thing because you're the head of the show, as they say. Referrals per week, 5 in the gray. Visitors per week, 5 in the gray. One-to-ones, a total of 20 points in the green, and CEUs per week, 15 in the yellow. So you're just 5 points from the hitting that green number. And while we're here, let's go through the palms. So no absences. Referrals given inside 3, referrals given outside 10, referrals received inside 1, referrals received outside 6, visitors 3, one-to-ones 39. Thank you for closed business given $5,591 and 22 CEUs, and that's in 26 weeks. So, how do you feel about that? I have some thoughts, but I want to hear what your thoughts are first.
The referrals are the one thing that sometimes is the most difficult thing for me, mostly because of the pace that I hit the ground at when I leave my meeting. Um, and I feel like my referrals have actually upticked to just a little bit in the last couple months. Um, and the visitors, I'm not surprised to see visitors uh, typically seem to be the challenging thing for quite a few people to bring in. For me, once again, some of it. Everybody's got a reason that they're struggling, and for me, some of it is the pace. Um, we have a pretty small staff at my job, and so I'm not always successful at working on the business instead of in the business. I get sucked into the business quite a bit, and that can get in the way a little bit. But I'm starting to work up some partnerships. For example, we have what is it, a water remediation company. Somebody goes in to help with water damage or fire damage. And I have had a few customers who, had some water leaks that they called us in, where we weren't actually doing new work. We were going in to remove some work that we had done before it got ruined. And I was able to turn them over to somebody. So I'm starting to work on those partnerships with the people in my chapter that I can immediately turn some business towards. Um, and I've got a couple of partners outside of my chapter that I haven't been able um, to fill their seats, like a professional organizer or something like that. That I get lots of with my job. I get quite a bit of opportunity to refer.
Yeah. Well, in life happens, right? So no one is expecting that we're all going to be in the green all the time. It's amazing when you are, and it's not to be green for green's sake. It's to be green for your business, right? Is what we're trying to do. But I wanted to point out because I think this is an important um, leadership moment. I'll call it is I've been sitting in on your chapter's leadership team meetings, and so this is a chapter that has weekly leadership team meetings, which I can tell you from experience that not everyone does. And I had the benefit of now that I'm over the chapter, I can see the reports a little deeper. And we dove through those last week. And so I got a chance to see the steady climb that your chapter is on since you guys took over. So the leadership team, they meet all three and talk about direction and where they're heading and what they want to do and how they're going to make things better. So, and it's very evident to me that that climb has been steady since October. I think it started towards September, but it's been straight uphill since then. And so your scores have been, you were 75, then you were 70, and then now you're 65. So that oftentimes that balance of, okay, you're pouring into obviously you have your own business to run, and you can only do so much if you have a short staff. You're doing the work. That is a lot of people. And then we talk about, now we're committing to run the meeting and also guide, with the leadership team, what do we want to do and how do we want to make it better. So there's an outlay there of what I like to call personal time that you would spend on your own self in your own BNI experience that you're putting into your chapter. So while the chapters, and you will still reap the benefits to some degree of that, because when the chapter grows, you grow too. But sometimes there's a sacrifice. I've been there. I understand it. So, do I take that weekly meeting with my team, or do I do a one-to-one where it might make me more money? And I think it's both. And so I want to recognize that it isn't you don't have to always be green to be doing a good job. So recognize that good jobs are done in many ways. Do you have thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, I do. And it's one of these where, I try not to fall back on that as an excuse. When I'm thinking about it, for example, my CEU stay pretty consistent because I do a fair amount of driving around. I've got, Spotify. And so, but I've tried to I have to try to pick and choose which ones I listen to, try to find the ones that look like something that I would find interesting and might help me with something that I'm working on. Um, and, I think I always come back to visitors because, one a month doesn't seem like that much to ask. And, and quite often with the circles that I'm in right now with the Chamber of Commerce and some other things like that, I'm talking to someone about BNI that has already experienced BNI on some level. Um, and, is maybe even already a member or has been a member before. Breaking out of those circles to find people who don't have some sort of preconceived notion is always fun. I've got somebody I've been working on, honestly, for 6 months that I just have to find the right time, but he's also in a trade, and getting tradespeople to show up or to feel like they have time to show up, at 7 o'clock in the morning, can be its own challenge. And that's who I encounter quite a bit. So, the visitors thing is one that seems to not take up as much time if I can do it. One-to-ones are becoming a little bit more natural. I really think at the end of this month, and really maybe at the end of this week, I'm going to be back in the green, back up to 70 at least, because I do have some CEUs. I thought I'd put them in. Um, but I'm kind of back on my feet after the holidays, and I'm getting some momentum, to try to, because momentum for me, it's all about momentum.
Right. Well,
If I can get momentum, I'm good. The minute I take a week off, I have to build that momentum back up, and I
yeah.
recognize that about myself.
Well, and you have 3 visitors in this was 26 weeks, so you've had 3 visitors. So even though you only have 5, because you must not have had any prior, that were kind of pulling, because it's a 6-month report. So
Right,
they're
right.
they're pulling in all of that. So it ebbs and it flows, and what we focus on grows. Oh boy, I just made a whole rhyme there. But I just wanted to point out that leadership load can often impact this. You're not the first person I've seen that was in leadership and has dipped, you're just 5 points off. So, it doesn't take that much. The last episode, which hasn't come out yet for everybody to listen to, but if you've listened, by the time this one comes out, you may have listened to that, is we talked a lot about maintaining your activity at a higher level, because it's much easier to keep it. And Chris is a perfect example. He's at 65. He was at 70 last month. He's going to be right back up there again. So it's a lot easier to keep it higher than it is to climb from the bottom. So
Yes.
and that's just keeping things going for your businesses. I can also see from the director consultant reports, when people's activity drops, so does what's coming into their business. So referrals drop, both given and received, and thank you for closed business drops, because we're not doing the things that we signed up to do, because that's what makes it work. So I wanted to make sure we talked a little bit about
Right.
that.
I would like to say I've also managed to leverage my ability to visit other chapters, to get. I've worked outside of my chapters quite a bit, which includes my one-to-ones. So, and a lot of my thing for closed business that I've gotten has been by expanding my, my reach through BNI. That's helpful.
Yeah, even if people are hesitant, I think, if they have someone in other chapters. If you're represented in every chapter, you're a realtor. I think that people are hesitant to go and visit other chapters, but that doesn't mean you can't go and talk to people. It just means you want to have the conversation first about, I'm not here to step on your toes. But I do want to know if there's anything we don't overlap on so I can talk about that. And that's often the case, right? Is there's maybe somebody's not licensed in this state or that if you're a realtor, but we all are in BNI to help each other grow. So I think that
Exactly.
giver's gain of it is even if somebody comes to visit your chapter that does the same thing as you, all of your people are not running off to go see them now. You build the relationship with you and your chapter. That's the whole point. As somebody coming in from to visit isn't going to steal your business. So it's a great way to build especially if you don't have other people that compete with you. So that's awesome. Join the Art Academy in Memphis. Master the skills needed to create stunning, realistic oil paintings. With expert instruction, you'll refine your craft. Enroll today at artacademyofmemphis.com. So you stepped into the president's role. Have you been in that role before when you were in the first
I
round of
have
BNI?
not. I was both. So in my previous chapter, I went from education to membership chair to VP, and then to from VP I went to secretary treasurer. But I left during that term, so I had done everything up to getting to president. Um, this was when VP was quite a bit more labor intensive, I guess would be the word, than it is now. Um, but I really enjoy being up in front of everybody and talking and being able to add some positive tone and but keep things professional. I just like to be in, I don't mind being in front of a crowd like that. Um, and I also tend to be pretty opinionated about how I think things can be done or things can be improved upon, which I think we're probably going to talk about later in this
That's
podcast.
my next question.
So what happens is I usually end up doing something because if I believe if I'm going to open my mouth with suggestions, I should be ready to contribute more than just a suggestion to try to help things get better. And so that's one of the things that led me to talk to the leadership last year about becoming president. Um, and it was pretty intentional with how we did it as far as my current leadership team and I. My vice president and I, Stacy, we had a pretty long conversation before either of us agreed to what we were going to do. And then we had a meeting before that, before we even took over. We went to lunch, the three of us, and we talked about the tone we wanted to set. So we really set the team up well, which is one of the things that I thought was important to do, rather than just putting the people who wanted to do the job into the job. Which I'm not saying that's necessarily what happened, but I have seen that happen where each position was kind of decided independently of each other, and I don't think that's how you build a team.
Right. Well, yes and yes. A lot of things you just said is oftentimes we don't have anyone that will even step up. So so we end up with whoever said they would if they had to, right? And that's not necessarily the best plan going forward. You're in one of the biggest chapters, if not the biggest. I haven't looked at the Mississippi chapters that are part of us yet, but you're in the biggest chapter that is in the Tennessee market. That's part of our region right now. So something good is happening. And when you guys got together, what was the first thing you decided needed attention for growth to happen?
Tone and attitude. I felt like we needed to and intention. Honestly, the main thing I talked about, the two things that I remember talking about the most were keeping everything positive. Um, because it can be pretty easy for people to fall into some gripes and things like that. But we needed to keep everything positive to get to have some forward movement, but also everything that we do as a leadership team, everything we try to manage people to do, or every idea we put out there that we want the chapter to embrace, has to have some intent behind it. It has to be an intentional thing where we're not just saying, "Hey, we're going to do this." What we're saying is, "This is what we would like to do. This is how we would like to do it, and this is how we think it's going to benefit the chapter, which is the why we want to do it." Um, and if we can uh, articulate that, then we have a lot more participation. It's one of the things we did, and it didn't really take shape the way that I had pictured it taking shape in my head, but that's kind of what happens when you turn it over to other people. Um, but it's one of the ways that we've curated, like the list of people who we want to come to our visitor day. It's a little bit different type of list than what I've seen in most of the chapters that I've visited or been to or been a part of, where we didn't focus on um, empowering or increasing one specific power group, for example. We pulled the whole chapter so we can uh, potentially get visitors in for seats that we want to fill, that we can both give and receive referrals from, um, kind of naturally right off the bat. And the thought is that that's going to help our growth as much as anything else, because it can help us with retention, and it puts a solid why. It embraces givers gain, because we told people we didn't just want them to pick seats that that they could get business from, and needed to be members that we can also and show benefits to fairly quickly. And that's a really good way, instead of just pulling um, 10 health industry related seats that may or may not really even have good options in the Mid South area. We're being a little bit more intentional.
Okay, love that. One thing that presidents sometimes struggle with is when to step in, because you kind of said that, right? Is you didn't envision it going in your head the way it's going. So when do you decide, what's that balance look like? When do you step in and when don't you?
Well, so the way I looked at it is, um, this was an idea I had, but I turned it over to the membership committee. I explained it as well as I could, and the way that it went, the way we did it the first time around, we saw some things. Yeah, there was, for example, there were multiple categories that were chosen because they sent out the entire list of seats that BNI has on the BNI website, so which is quite a few. And so what happened is we had maybe 3 different seats, maybe a business coach, a business consultant, and then some other sort of business coaching seat that clearly people were saying the same thing. They just, because everybody's different, they had latched onto that seat when all 3 of the seats were very, very similar in function. So we paired those together, right? And we just said business coach or something along those lines. Um, I think the key to it, because it's the very beginning, it's the first time we've tried it, is not necessarily to step in right away. I think it's better to step in once the first iteration is there. What we do is we look at how it went, and then we um, decide what needs to be tweaked and what doesn't need to be tweaked. And it's not saying anything was done incorrectly. We just take an idea, and it's going to morph each time we try it until we get it right, or until we get something that seems to work well. And if it doesn't work, it doesn't work. It's always a danger when you try to do something different than what everybody is used to. Is um, Sometimes it doesn't work the first time, and everybody's okay. Okay, we're going to go back the way we've always done it. And I think it's important to stick with it and try to continue to improve it. And then you just have to you have to set kind of a point where it's okay. This isn't working. Let's try something else. I don't have a point for this particular program yet that I'm going to be at that I'm going to say that in my head. But I definitely think we're going to get at least through 2 focused visitor days. using this system or a version of it before we really think about going to in a different direction.
Sure. Well, and I think that one of our core values is innovation. So, trying things that are a little unique and different from just because somebody else hasn't
Right.
done it doesn't mean it's a bad thing. Oftentimes it's a really good thing but until you do it, you don't know. So,
Yeah, and
learning
I also
and go ahead.
I'm sorry. I also think it's important that um, that you evaluate each thing individually. So, because there are some things that, as a leader, you have to step in and say, "Well, we're going to stop this right now, and we're going to go in a different direction." Something like the positive attitudes. If you see people sliding into a pattern of um, that older chapters like ours can sometimes slide into, where people people have seen a lot of things and they gripe, or it's just very easy to backslide a little bit. And I think it's important when we see those things that we positively reinforce what we want, instead of it's you don't go in and I think the term that I've heard before is the beatings will continue until morale improves. um, that's not what we're doing, right? We want
Right.
to give people a reason to have an improved morale, and when they start to slide backwards, we wanna encourage them and prop them up a little bit. So,
Yeah, that's kind of the opposite of the positive attitude, that we all
yes, it is.
subscribe to. So I'm glad that's not the case. All right, so let's roll over to your Clifton strengths and see why you lead the way you do. So I'm gonna read them for the audience, in case they can't see them. So your number 1 strength is woo. You love meeting new people and winning them over. You enjoy socializing and making connections. Your number 2 is intellection. You enjoy deep thinking. You're introspective and appreciate intellectual discussions. Your number 3 is adaptability. You prefer to go with the flow. You take things as they come and discover the future one day at a time. Your number 4 is strategic. You quickly spot patterns and issues that others miss. You generate alternative paths forward and choose the most effective one. Sounds like what we were just talking about. And number 5, developer. You recognize and cultivate the potential in others. You spot the signs of each small improvement and love when you see someone make progress. All right. So, um, I know you said we talked a little bit before this. You said you were surprised well, you weren't surprised execution. So the themes I haven't brought up the themes in a minute. So the colors that were on there, you had one, the first one, woo, is an influencing theme. And then intellection and strategic are strategic thinking themes. And then you had adaptability and developer, which are relationship building themes. You did not have an executing theme. So how do you feel about not having an executing theme, at least in your top 5?
Not surprised, honestly. I can be a bit of a procrastinator, and I've always a lot of people will say that they are a delegator, and that can be something that is challenging for me in my job, because specifically, if we're installing material for a closet or something somewhere, and I have somebody that's been doing it for a month, and I see them struggling with something, it's very difficult to not to say, just let me do it. Um, and which is different than, hey, let me show you a way to do this that'll make it not as much of a struggle. Um, but I do, one of my favorite things I used to tell people, well, I still tell people this, when I was managing restaurants, for example, and I was in a college town, and the favorite thing to do was uh, see these kids that worked for us graduating, moving on to a career that they were excited about, and being able to actively give them a good review or a good reference to an employer when they called. Um, I've always enjoyed helping people move forward. Um, you know, See, even if it was within a company I was in, and somebody that came up under me was promoted and went somewhere else in the company to work, and I was part of that. And so I'm some of what's the way that the Clifton Strength stuff works together did not surprise me. Um, Execution can be a challenge for me sometimes. If I'm part of a team, I can manage, for example, a leadership team where I have some ideas, but I want help executing them. I think it's important to find somebody that you work well with that can bring that to the table. And I have that in both Stacy and Brandy on my team. Um, and so a lot of it is just give them my thoughts, kind of let them move forward with it, and then provide them any and all support that I can provide.
Yeah.
And
Well,
and
what I was going to bring up is that you very well may have based on what you've been saying, you probably have, excuse me, high ideation. That's probably 6 through 10. That's in the unseen stuff. You can go back and unlock that if you want to see more. But where when you just do your top 5, you don't get the full picture, so to speak. You get what you fall into day to day. So you probably have that in the execution themes. You probably have some in that too, because it doesn't mean you don't have any. It just means that's just not your top set of things that you go to. But I love looking at how things work together. So in your top 5, you have woo plus intellection. A lot of people think connecting with others and deep thinking are opposites. How did those 2 work together for you, especially in conversations with clients or members or even the leadership team?
well, I mean, I think that the thing, the breaking the ice is definitely part of it, but it's very important if you're going to be a communicator to you have to have listening skills. And I've not always been the best at that, but I've always recognized the value of it, and so I've actually practiced it quite a bit. And so I really, if I can talk to someone about my ideas, that's great. But then it's important that you share airtime when you're in a conversation, whether it's professionally, personally. I think taking the time to listen to somebody and their ideas is equally important to being able to, maybe more important, honestly, to being able to express mine, because they might hear an idea that you can latch onto, and maybe you can contribute to that. And and I think that's where the deep thought and the you have deeper conversations with somebody, especially if you get someone who has something they're passionate about. It can be very valuable for building trust and building the relationship, but it also can help you improve. And it's fun. It's fun to listen to somebody talking about something about which they have a passion or a drive for. So I think the 2 kind of play off of each other, or for me, they do. I probably, well, that's not for everybody, but for me, I think that that's where uh, they play off of each other's. And I love to ask questions about what someone is talking about, and then just be quiet and you know, let them regale me with their ideas or whatever they have. So,
Yeah. Well, and I love in BNI, I think that's what makes us unique is, if you go to, I'm a chamber ambassador and you can go to all the chamber events, but oftentimes it's not a two-way street, right? It's a very, sometimes very one-way street, which is not always pleasant. So the thing about BNI is we teach you how to be both, right? As the one-to-one is designed for us both to give information and take information so that we can help each other. And when you go to other things, it's not just chamber. And oftentimes, you're going to run into people who know how to do that, and that's great. But it's not always that way, and that's the unique value I think that we have is that we teach that, right? So we can all be great, and that listening half the time, 2 ears, one mouth thing. Listening is twice as much as you talk, which I sometimes struggle with because I like to talk. But yeah,
same.
yeah. So you also have strategic and adaptability. So you have the ability to see where things are going while also responding in real time. So that adaptability is a flexibility that not everybody has. So how does that combination help you make decisions when things don't go exactly as planned?
Well, a big part of it for me is, and I'm in a theater family now, and we've talked about this, um, it's not really a never let them see you sweat thing, but it's just, if you don't, if you're responding to a crisis, whether it's, for me, if it's on a job site, or if it's, um, getting to my meeting and booting up my computer and finding out that BNI Plus has completely wiped everything clean, and is
Ooh,
down, which is what happened last Thursday.
no.
And then trying to figure out a way to recover from that, and lead, go through a process, whether it's leading the meeting or, sometimes when we're on installation, is something goes wrong, um, rather than expressing anything about it going wrong, you turn to a different direction and you just turn towards a solution. And honestly, waiting tables and bartending probably, and managing restaurants, because it's such a chaotic um, environment, probably helped me a lot out quite a bit with that skill.
Yeah.
Um, but that's, I literally, it's funny that came up when I saw it, because literally last Thursday, we tried to open up BNI Plus, and our meeting was completely wiped clean. And we were able to, between Brandy and I, um, come up with a plan, and she generated um, a PowerPoint of slides that she had, and we managed to have our meeting go through very, very smoothly. And that's one of the reasons I wanted to be president, is because I like being up there in front of everybody and having to think on my feet and all that kind of stuff. So um, that's I could give lots of examples, but I get a lot. I just say I get quite a bit of opportunity, especially working in people's homes. Never knowing really what you're ultimately going to walk into as far as construction goes. I get more opportunity than I would like to admit to
Okay.
practice, kind of pivoting in the moment.
On the fly.
And yeah, so
Staying ahead in a world driven by technology is key. At Wisdom Integrators, we don't just solve problems, we create opportunities. Wisdom Integrators, connecting your world, solving your problems.
Well, and so the BNI Plus thing, that's the first time I've heard that where it didn't work. So let's just throw in a solution here, potential solution. You can download a deck. Am I crazy? Can you download from, if it's working? Let's just say it's working. Can you go in and download a deck
to
from?
download your meeting into a PowerPoint.
Yes.
I don't know, because we haven't had to worry about it. It's been pretty rock solid.
Okay.
And in the moment, the entire site wasn't working. And we basically PowerPointed through to the 10-minute speaker, and I had my laptop open and connected to BNI Plus, or connected to the internet. I kept refreshing it, and it started working at some point. And
Okay.
so
You got
the
it back.
10-minute speaker used his own laptop and for his PowerPoint. And then when we switched off of him, instead of going back to ours, I took my computer up and plugged it in and picked up where the meeting had left off, and we
Okay.
finished out with the All Plus.
So I might, because I'm not the one running this in any of the chapters, but I feel like in the training that there was a section where they said you could download it, because sometimes some of the rooms that people meet in have sketchy Wi-Fi, so they
I mean, we have sketchy Wi-Fi, so that's what we
okay,
thought it
so
was at first. Um, and we just went through the checklist, the techie checklist, trying to figure out what was going wrong.
yeah,
Until finally we just did what we did.
yeah.
And it did start working within probably 30 minutes. So
Okay, that's awesome. Well, I feel like that's what I just wanted as a potential solution is, while it's kind of like we're sitting right now in a winter storm, which is why I'm broadcasting from here. So in all the, we had plenty of notice, all of us in this area. So those of you listening from outside, we had, well, anywhere from snow to sleet to south of us, significant freezing rain, to where like the city of Oxford, Mississippi is in a crisis because they have so many downed trees and no power and all the things. But all of us knew 4 or 5, at least 6 days in advance this was coming. So we prepped ahead, and, everybody, of course, we're in the South, so they cleaned out all the bread and the milk and all the fun things that you don't need, is
the
to
milk
clean the
sandwiches are a thing in the
yeah,
South.
there are no sandwiches for anyone for a while. But where I was going with that is the planning ahead. So if you're running BNI Plus, or even if you're not, if you're just running, what we used to do before we even had BNI Plus was I would upload a deck for the weekly meeting, up to the cloud, and the cloud where the three of us leadership team had access to it, because once I was on my way, the only time I've ever missed, and I didn't miss it, I've never ever missed a meeting, or not. I had a sub, but I've always had a sub if I couldn't be there, but just not showed up, is I got hit. I had an accident on the way to meet the meeting, and I was like texting, like I trying to figure out what I was going to do. I ended up showing up for the end of the meeting, but I had uploaded the deck to the cloud so they could download it. So BNI Plus, I believe you can download it so you can have one, even if it's old, it's probably better than standing up in front of a group with nothing. You
Well,
guys were able to.
we're having our leadership team meeting today, and that's one of the subjects we're going to talk
Yeah,
about, is
you guys
what we
figured
could
out
do
how
to
to
not have to
pivot.
travel next time. Yeah.
Yeah, I love that. You pivoted, and that's amazing. But for those that are listening, that if you want to just as a backup plan, I was going to say, is like, I knew I might have to do this. We weren't going to cancel it. We wanted to still do the podcast, so we just did it from here. So we brought all the stuff that we needed, hopefully, minus one little thing for me and one little thing for you. But but it's all working out. So anyway, all right, back to the show. So you also have developer and woo. So you're wired to engage people and help them grow. How does that pairing show up when you're working with somebody who doesn't yet see their potential?
It can be tricky, because usually at that point you're dealing with someone who maybe just doesn't have the confidence to see what they need to see. And I find it's a kind of a delicate thing, because uh, the way that I usually handle that is giving them some responsibility, putting them in a position that I know that they've got everything they need from a skill set and a personality to succeed at, and finding something small enough to give them just like a little bit of confidence and building it up that way. Um, but I also think that when you see somebody doing something well, or if you see somebody that is um, succeeding, or even somebody who's maybe just conquering a fear of some sorts. We have a member of our chapter who's fairly new who was terrified. I think I won't say he's terrified, but he was not comfortable doing his 30-second presentation, um, and he's been killing it for at least a month. And it's just a matter of letting someone know, if you know somebody especially is struggling with something, you see them doing well at it, then you need to let them know. But frankly, I think that it's even better if you see someone doing something well, whether you know they're struggling or not, let them know, because
Yes,
maybe they are and you don't know it.
yes,
And but from a leadership standpoint, I think uh, it- you can't just give somebody confidence. You've got to give them a path to that, and then you have to give them recognition along the way.
love that.
And it needs to be genuine, and um, not necessarily from a I call it not cheerleading necessarily. It needs to be sincere, and sometimes cheerleading can come across as insincere, but you
Right.
have to kind of judge it based off of personality and how someone's going to react. Somebody is not comfortable being in the spotlight. They're not going to want you just calling them out and saying, "Hey, everybody give this person a round of applause," but pulling them to the side at the end of the meeting and say, "Man, I think that was really good,"
Yeah.
to go a long way.
Love that. So tailoring it to the individual. And you made a point in there too that I think it gets overlooked that people volunteer to do leadership roles. And
Yes.
people don't recognize, if you've never been in the top three positions, ELT, then you don't know what goes into it. It's a lot. And we often just sort of overlook that, you show up every week and you put on the show and nobody says anything. It's like, it's nice sometimes to say thanks to the people that nobody's getting paid to do this. They're just doing it because, it's helpful somebody has to do it. And if you have a penchant for those kinds of things, it's great when you can apply them to something that will help your business and everybody else's grow too. So if you haven't said thank you to your president or vice president or secretary treasurer recently, when you go to your meeting this week, do that. All right. So, in terms of this doesn't have to be BNI, but what's one early mistake in business or leadership that shaped how you operate today?
I think the biggest mistake that we made when we bought the business from my parents And honestly, probably is a mistake that was made that could have been corrected when I joined the business in 2002 that would have the business in a completely different place than it is right now. Um, we knew we needed to grow. We didn't know what to do to grow. And instead of finding an advisor or a mentor of some sort, we just kind of tried whatever and we didn't have a plan. We didn't have any sort of structure. I believe that um, having a mentor, even in 2002, when I first came up here, at least when I started really getting into operations and interested in growing the business, which happened fairly quickly, uh, I think one of my biggest mistakes that I would correct would be not finding a mentor that could help me recognize my my strengths and how to use them, but also help me strategize ways to deal with the things that I'm not necessarily strong at. So
Well, being a business coach, I gotta say, I love that in general, but,
I knew that you were going to like that answer. Yeah.
of course, I'm gonna love that, but, I agree, I think and I've talked on previous episodes about I've had mentors all along the way and, both when I work corporate and in my business, and I think there's no I'm strategy and maximizer, so for me, the quickest route to the top is find somebody else who's done that and figure out what they did and then make it your own. So I think that's a great way to move. I love that that's the lesson that you're sharing with the rest of us. So let's look forward. What excites you most about what you're building now, both in your business and your chapter?
For the chapter, I just look forward to, we set some growth goals. Um, and, but what I'm really looking forward to with the chapter itself is I'm hoping to hand it off next year um, with with the momentum that we've got and not see sometimes from leadership change to leadership change, it can be a whole different um, set of personalities. And so you can get a lot of inconsistency from year to year. And we would like to uh, set things up for a consistent uh, handoff, but also to keep moving forward and hopefully have some things in place that are easy to continue because everybody will be used to doing them. Um, so I think for me, for the chapter, I would like to see us grow. Um, I will be honest. I'm not somebody that thinks that that a 75 or 80 person chapter would be fun to be in. Um, but I think 50 people would be great. But I'm willing, I'm excited to see the changes that having a higher membership brings to how we have to operate a meeting, for example. Um, and to keep everybody moving forward and keep the positivity, the bigger we get. And, from a personal standpoint for the business, I'm excited. We do have a business coach and, and I'm excited to get some traction because we have a lot of the behind the scenes stuff we've got fairly solved right now. So now we're just in the phase that a lot of small businesses, especially construction light is what I call what we do. We get into where we need to staff up, and it's a combination of filling our schedule enough to keep everybody busy, and then adding salespeople to be able to create business so we can hire more people to install. We have some modest goals, um, and we're hoping to build the business to a point that we can sell it.
Awesome. Um, what do you hope if you were to look back 5 years, what do you hope the legacy that you left for your chapter and your leadership are in BNI?
Um, I think that I would like if I haven't really thought about my legacy in BNI because I don't think on those
You're in
terms.
the
I guess,
throes of
but
it right now, so yeah,
you're
it's
right.
hard to
I'm in
look
the middle of
forward.
it. I haven't had time to think about that. Um,
And Intellection likes to think a lot before
I would
they,
I would like for people, I think, to look back on our year, um, and have a positive memory of it, but also have numbers to back that up. Um, I don't think it's necessarily judged off of your end of year close of business. Thank you for close business number. I think that's a we're of the mindset that growth and everybody enjoying being together as a group will feed off of each other and will supply a lot of the other things. So if I had to think of a legacy, I would just like people um, to remember us seeming like we had our act together, and and just that we when we had ideas, they weren't mysterious. People understood them, and we were patient, and we you know we propped up as many of our members as we could to make them to help them be successful.
Love that. That's good stuff there. And if somebody wanted to build a service business or lead a chapter that lasts, what do you think is the first thing they should get right?
From a business standpoint, I think that systems and um, a lot of the important kind of boring parts of owning and running a business need to be uh, buttoned down pretty tight. A good accountant, the bookkeeping, being organized in a way that makes sense, um, marketing and budgeting, at least being structured, even if you're not sure what the budgets need to be when you're first starting out. I think if you can get that groundwork laid, it allows you to make a strategy that's going to be more effective to try to be successful in generating and building the business. Um, from a chapter standpoint, um, I really just think communication and being able to clearly communicate your ideas um, and be willing to listen. Uh, and that doesn't always mean, I mean, I have plenty of people in my chapter who have come to me with ideas of things that they wanted to do. Um, but I don't always take those suggestions and run with them, but I give them all the thought that I think they deserve. They all deserve to be examined, and maybe even sometimes I've gone back to a member and said, what if we take your idea, but we do it a little different, do it this way? Is that so? So it's more collaboration.
Right.
So,
Good
and
stuff.
I think those two things, I think that's a very important thing for a BNI chapter is I think communication is very important.
Right.
Um, I think being consistent and being uh, clear and and listening as much as you speak, maybe more probably,
Right.
because the members are who are driving the chapter, and so you need to be able to listen to them and then kind of organize your thoughts out of that.
Yeah, love that. You gotta have the team all kinda rowing in the same direction, so that's good stuff, and the points about having all the systems people in place, you can often not everybody can afford that when they're starting out to have, all those different players, so to speak, but they still have to be done in an effective way, so, you have to come to it with a strategy of what am I gonna do until then kinda thing, so I love that.
I definitely think it's important. I think it's important if you can't afford it, that you afford as much of it as you can
Yeah, for
to get.
sure. Yeah. Whatever you do the least of, the not in the least effective way, for sure. All right, so now it is time for the quick fire round. So just quick short answers to some fun questions. First thing you do in the morning that sets the tone for the day.
Wow, my morning routine's pretty set and it's not very impressive. Um, I take about an hour to myself, um, and then I take some intentional time fixing breakfast for my kids and talking with them, and then that gets me kind of in a good mindset for when everybody leaves for school um, to kind of move out into my day.
Okay, awesome. Harder part of leadership, starting momentum or sustaining it?
Oh man, I think honestly, sustaining it right now is probably the most challenging.
Okay. One thing people misunderstand about leading a chapter,
That it takes more work than they have time.
for sure. Folding or hanging, and why is one of them wrong?
Yes. So the so here is the short answer from a guy who designs custom closets for a living. There's not a right or wrong way. Um, it's an individual space and it's an individual choice. And our job is to design with that in mind and not to change it.
Okay, perfect. Best lessons come from successes or mistakes?
Mistakes.
Okay, I agree. If you could ban one thing from ever entering a closet again, what would it be?
Furniture.
Furniture. Okay.
Dressers, specifically, dressers.
Okay. My husband has a dresser in his closet.
Takes up a lot of room, doesn't it?
It does, although he doesn't have nearly as much stuff as I do, but yeah. I couldn't fit a dresser in mine.
The second thing on that list, for just for the sake of saying it, is uh, pants hung by the cuff.
Okay. That's a bad thing.
Yes, that's.
Okay.
I mean, I'm not saying it's a bad thing. I don't. It makes my job a lot.
Okay. I've never seen that, so that's interesting. Um, One thing business owners overthink way too much.
Just one thing.
Uh-huh.
Um, I think probably marketing.
Okay. All right. And your original tagline was, "It's 7 a.m. Do you know where your pants are?" How important has it been to keep a sense of humor and playfulness while building something serious?
I think it's always important. I think that you can be a good mixture of both. I actually have that on my new business cards. It went away briefly, but my dad thought of it, and so as an homage to him, I put it on my cards when I ran out.
Nice. All right. And finish this sentence. Leadership to me means,
Setting an example and staying positive and not getting discouraged.
love that. All right. So, this episode is a great reminder that leadership isn't about chasing a perfect score. It's about direction, ownership, and trajectory. And a yellow score paired with clear leadership and rising engagement is often healthier than a green score with no momentum. So, Chris, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
All right. Loved having you. And before we wrap up, I wanted to thank everybody for listening, especially my fellow BNI members. Remember to give yourself a CEU. And if this conversation helped you think differently about leadership, performance, or capacity, be sure to subscribe so you don't miss any future episodes, like the episodes that reaches more people, and share it with a fellow BNI member. And if you want to understand how to explain what I do, this episode is a great way. You hear things that we're talking about. I help people grow, and so that's what I'm looking for. But thank you all for being here, and we'll see you next time on The Perfect 100. Thanks for listening to The Perfect 100. If today's episode sparked a new idea or inspired you to show up differently in your chapter, share it with your team. And be sure to subscribe so you never miss a conversation. And if you're curious about your own CliftonStrengths and how to bring out the best in yourself or your chapter or your business, head to TammyZurak.com to learn more about building your superpowers into everything you do. Keep showing up, keep connecting, and keep building your perfect 100.